Hello, I'm Ethan Silvers.
And I'm Nicholas Kelly.
And today on Between Two Consultants, we're going to be talking about working from home, and in particular, how to up your game for video calls. We're all doing a lot of video calls. Some of us are doing webinars, and it's very valuable for a lot of us to have really high-end setups. And today, Nick Kelly, who's spent a lot of time figuring out good high-end setups, Nick is going to walk us through what he has done and how that has proven beneficial for him. Over to you, Nick.
Awesome, Ethan. So to do that, let's look at what it looks like. What's the setup? How do we present it if you're looking from the other side? So I'm going to flip through a few different views here. So I'm going to go to my secondary camera, which is always a little bit of fun. So now I'm over here and changing things up a little bit for folks. We're used to that in movies and maybe some YouTube videos. Let me do another one. Regularly happens where I'm having a conversation with folks and maybe want to do a little bit of brainstorming. And so we have it just a setup, good to go. Let's start whiteboarding right away. So we can start brainstorming some ideas. We're not wasting any time. Now for me, as a consultant, nothing frustrates me more on a call where I have to hear someone telling me, hey, let's get set up for a slides. I'm going to share my slides now. And then they go about, taking 30 seconds to share slides. Don't need to do that. Get straight into the slides, straight into the content. We're not wasting any time. We're jumping right into it. So that's what it looks like. That's the end result. And that's what we're going to talk to you a little bit about on this episode.
So Nick, what sort of technology have you been using and leveraging to get this pretty great setup?
So it's certainly been a journey. The first thing I started looking at was, is there software out there that I can use to help kind of orchestrate, pull in content together, drop in a logo over my video feed. And I ended up going through this sort of 2-month experience of watching lots of YouTube videos and figuring out what people have done in the past. And what was really interesting, Ethan, is that most of this stuff is coming out of the gaming industry. People who are live streaming on Twitch and they're sharing their screen and it has to look good, it has to look flashy. And so I kind of took the best practices from those, and a lot of work's been done on it already. So what I can show you here is what my setup looks like. You're going to have to excuse the mess, please. And the sense of it is there's a lot of cables here. There's a lot of stuff you're going to see on my screen. So I'm going to jump over to the whiteboard, and what you're going to see here is my setup. This is what it looks like. I just recently took a picture of this. Still have to clean up a little bit of the cables there, but this is what it looks like. And to go into some of the details, what are you seeing here? What's on the screen? So you can see there's a lot of lighting, obviously. That's going to be important. Now remember, this is my setup. I tend to like to do things overkill a little bit. I end up doing a lot of webinars, a lot of conferences. I'm on sessions with a lot of people. So where I'm standing, which is here, I stand over here. I want to see everyone on the screen. Right? So I've got these big screens here, 265-inch screens, where I'm seeing everything that's going on. And I also want to see what I'm presenting. So I have that on my big screen over there. So you can see where I'm standing, I get an overview of everything. This is then my command center here. So this is where I sort of orchestrate what's going on in the session. And then there's a few other bits and pieces. You'll notice there's a microphone over here, and there's this funny little thing, which is called a Stream Deck. This is like, imagine having macros or shortcut keys on your keyboard. It's like that, but they've got their own little displays behind the button. It's really, really cool. You can just press a button, and it automatically flip to one of my other views, like camera B, or my slides, or my whiteboard. It's right there in front of me. So I'm not fidgeting around looking for what key combination is going to do what. It is right there. I'm good to go. Then, of course, the most overkill part of this setup are the cameras. All right, so you can see over here, I've got 2 cameras. I've actually got a third camera here as well. I tend to use 2. These are my good wife's DSLRs. She's a photographer. And rather than just having them sit in storage, we have them here using for live video feeds and recorded sessions as well. Really high quality. So what you'll see here was, as I switch back over to my camera, what you see is the blurred effect, or it's called bokeh. So I'm in focus here, and if I move back, if I move forward, it auto focuses on my face, so it doesn't get blurry, but it blurs the background. So you kind of get that sort of more professional look to it. And so one of the secrets of the industry is, what's the frame rate? Frame rate should be 24, so it's like in the movies, right? So we're kind of naturally kind of wired to look at it get excited about the movie frame rate. So, you know, Ethan, that's kind of like just the flavor of what the setup is right now.
Yeah, and just a real quick comment. I was with Nick on a group call the other day, and one of our colleagues, Shelby, mentioned, how come Nick looks above average today? Which was Shelby's way of paying a compliment. And it's very accurate. It really does help with also just like your general appearance, which is really nice. Nick usually shows up as balding and like sort of hideous, and now coming in really nice and clear.
Yeah, so it's a great contrast between yourself and myself, Ethan. You know, it's you can dress up as much as you want, but then you know the lighting really makes a difference. And you know, if there's one thing to do, it's invest in decent lighting, and it doesn't have to be that expensive.
I mean, you look like you're ready for beauty pageants, Nick. So. Was there anything about video production software you wanted to talk about?
Oh yeah, good call. So how do you orchestrate all this in the background? There's a lot of tools out there, like, you know, if you want to look this stuff up there, it's like vMix is one I looked at before. But also I'm not really a fan of having to pay for this kind of software. So there's a free one, OBS. I think it's the Open Broadcast System, something like that. But basically it's a piece of software where you can drop in a logo on top of your view. You can have different types of images. You can layer things on top. It's really, really good. And so think of it like a mini production studio, but that's basically in your hands. So you remember when I showed you the view of my screen in front of me? That's where I have OBS. So I can just basically orchestrate everything that's going on and have those sequences. So, you know, when I hit this button on my Stream Deck, I get a slide. I get a transition. So it kind of segues me going over to this camera with just the press of a button. So it's much easier to be able to do this, with a tool like that, with OBS, for example.
And having been in meetings with Nick where he's presenting, like, it does make a significant difference. It saves times. It comes off as much more professional, and it's been very impressive. And clients have mentioned it. A couple more things to talk about. So, and we'll be sharing Nick's information so that you can get hold of him, because as Nick was saying, this is a journey. And so Nick, the two things is, what does that journey look like? And then the other thing, and I'll remind you of the other thing when we get to it, is what if we don't want to go to the top level that you're at, and we want to do something that is a little bit down, but still really effective? So first, describe the journey for us of how you got to where you are.
That's really interesting. So I had as you know, I'm on the speaking circuit, and of course, coronavirus changed all of that. It's like, okay, are we going to stop the speaking circuit altogether, or do we transition? Like many, many people transition to remote work. Of course, the same thing happened with public speaking situations. So I was approached by TDWI to say, look, do we want to continue doing your conferences? And if you do, you're kind of, you're going to have a good setup at home. And that was really the inception, Ethan, was, okay, if I'm the person everyone's relying on, there's people dialing in from all over the world to watch a training or a conference, I have to make sure nothing goes down. So the very first thing I did was actually get 2 internet connections, one fiber and one cable. So it wasn't going to be me that was going to be having internet outages. So I have some redundancy there. And then after that, I was thinking, well, okay, that's the most important thing. So how do we up the game on the presentation? And that's really where I started doing all that research and figuring out, okay, obviously you need lighting, you need good cameras. And like you said, maybe not everyone has a bunch of DSLRs. And, my wife and I were kind of like figuring out how much have we invested in here. And it's like 20-25 grand on this setup. It's not like we just spent that money to do it. We have all that gear already, pretty much, by and large, except for the lighting. So what would you need in order to do this yourself? And I'm going to jump back to the whiteboard just to say, focus on a few things. I think if there's 3 things you wanted to have that are going to be really making an impact, lighting, get one light, get a ring light, get that light. Makes a really big impact. I think that was like $40 or something. It's not a huge investment. And another thing you're going to want to have is, I don't have it here on this view, but get a decent webcam. Get a 1080p webcam. The one that I really like is the Logitech. There's a C920, C930, really, really solid. You can zoom it in and zoom it out. Not a lot of webcams can do that. So it's really effective at doing that. And the final piece to that is, you don't necessarily need a mic. You can see I have one here. They're cheap. You don't necessarily need it. But what you do need is that software, that free software I mentioned, OBS, brilliant piece of software, really helps you leverage the call, how you manage the call, getting your branding across in the call, which is going to be super important. So that's sort of what I would recommend, Ethan, for the kind of light version of getting a more better setup.
Nick, I don't want to step on your toes with this, but I think that you might have left out the most important piece. If you can go back to that picture real quick,
Sure.
It's not clear to me why you neglected it, but you do have that can of, I don't know exactly what kind of drink it is, but I think that that is the juice that keeps everything going.
Very important piece. You know what? I actually have one here with me, and it's not the same. It's not the same can.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, it's a different color, so that the stuff doesn't stick around my desk terribly long. But it's where the magic happens.
Yeah, it's critical. Yeah, so thank you for. I think that if you take nothing else away from this webinar that we're doing, remember that it's critical to have that can of whatever is near you. So thank you for that. That helped understand what those, if you still want to do nice, but you don't have those fancy cameras laying around, what to do. So that gives us a very good understanding of, hey, there's a really high end that Nick can help you walk through if you're curious about that. And then there's also a step down, and we'll be sharing with you, if we haven't already, what those items are. Nick, before we go to wrap up, was there anything else you wanted to share about that, just in terms of, if you want to do medium end, you can go to Amazon, pick those things up real quickly. High end will take a little bit longer, maybe to get that all set up. Are we talking days, weeks, months?
Yeah, I'd say we're probably talking a couple of weeks maybe. And if you are looking at DSLRs, and I do get this on occasion on client calls, is what DSLR? I want to spend a little bit of money. Maybe I want to drop $1,000 on this. What Canon camera should I get? Because I'm using all Canon, of course. Nikon and all Sony have great cameras too. I'll get the Canon EOS R. That's just one to think about. But we'll drop all this stuff down and in a list here for you. But that's really there's a kind of medium where you could get a couple of lights, get the microphone, get a DSLR, and I would also just look out in the community there for the live streamers. They've done all this stuff ad nauseum.
Thank you so much, Nick. That wraps it up today for our first edition of Between Two Consultants. This will be an ongoing webinar. In this webinar, what Nick and I will be talking about are primers for business and consulting, things about big data, data analytics, how to leverage technology, process improvement, different types of technology that we are using. So please continue to check in and join us on Between Two Consultants. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.